Okay. Check. Alrighty. Time to record some more audiobook. Mm-mm. Excuse me. Just getting ourselves set up here. Oh, how do you set up scroll mode? Maybe you can't. Stop it, headphones. Headphones, stop it now. Check. Okay, there we go. Now I can hear myself. Nope. Nope, there it went. Welcome to VlogaNovel on my channel VlogaNovel, where I can't make my microphone work apparently. Oh, that's better. Okay. Hello, Monimus and Sheathed. Another late night recording session indeed. Audio issues. I have to go mute my wife's phone because I heard a notification the last time somebody posted on Discord. Ow. All right. So, as we did last time, we are going to record approximately 30 seconds of silence as a standard silence base. We did it last time, but obviously the booth might have changed slightly. The mic might be in a different position, so we get a new silence file for 30 seconds. Here we go. You're a jerk, Sheathed. All right, that should be good enough. So, jumping in on Chapter 4. Oh, I need my... That silence made you hungry? Grab yourself some food. We're going to be here a while. So I need additional headphones. My earbuds, under my headphones. So that I can listen back to some characters whose voices I will need to repeat. Ah, crap, I didn't export chat for myself. I actually need to do that. Oh, wow. That really drastically reduces my ability to hear myself. Okay, well, we won't have it constantly. We'll just have it sit here, ready to go in case we need it. Oh, God. Now I can hear my headphones in the background. I'm going to go do that on my computer. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay. Do 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 do. Bum 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 bum. Here we go. Chapter 4. Fucking headphones. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Okay, and now we do the podcast version. Nightblade, Chapter 4. Nightblade, Chapter 4. Nightblade, Chapter 4. Lauren hoped to find Chet away from home, but that hope fell when she found him out back fletching an arrow with a knife and gut string. She could not hope to avoid him, but she still had her tongue, and it had served her once already. She stepped from the trees. Hey, Lauren. Sorry about that. But she still had her tongue, and it had served her once already. She stepped from the trees. Chet's stern face softened at the sight of her. His close-cropped hair glowed golden in the sun, and his bare arms glistened with his work. Upon past years, she had thought to take Chet for a husband, dowry or no. They would find a way to pay it, or they would run away together. But that dream had grown dimmer and dimmer as the years passed, and had guttered out when his mother fell ill. Now, 2 years later, the sickness kept her as close to and as far from death as ever. Chet could never muster Lauren's dowry as a huntsman, and he would never leave his home to run away. Not then, and not now with Lauren and Zane. All these thoughts flitted in and out of her head in an instant, and then she put on the expression she knew she must wear, unconcerned and gently happy to see him. "Should you not be dressing for the dance?" "The same could be said for you. That cloak is not the dress your mother chose, I think." Hey, what's up, that ninja? Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for dropping by. Lauren shrugged. "I must wash before donning it. I make for the river to bathe before making myself a fair young flower." Chet put down his arrow a little too hastily and stood. "I will come. This is dull work and does little to calm my anger." She knew Chet's temper burned bright and long, though it took ages to stoke. Lauren had often wondered what would happen if her father sparked it true, but now she would never know. Lauren cocked her head and narrowed her eyes. "I think you presume much. A woman's bathing is no time nor place for a young, fair-haired man who holds her in no bond of marriage." That had the required effect. Chet's face turned red as a berry. "I meant I would wait behind the bank, of course." I would wait behind the bank, of course." Lauren laughed lightly. "Do not fret so. Will you dance with me tonight?" "Of course. And will you, with me?" He stepped closer. "I would not have asked if I meant to cruelly refuse. But my parents might object. They require such a great dowry and may refuse to let me dance with one who cannot offer it." Chet glowered. Not even they could deny me so simple a thing as a dance. Lauren both loved and bemoaned how easily she could sway his mood, a symptom of young love, she supposed. She had long known she could, but she rarely had the need, and just now it would not do to have him too angry. "Fetch me your own dowry," Lauren said. "Weave it of dandelions and lilacs, and place it upon my head. Then I will give you your dance, and you can give me mine." He flushed again, but gentler this time. "A crown of pretty flowers for a pretty flower of a girl? This I can do, and gladly. But no dandelions and lilacs lie near the river. I am astute in my planning, then." He chuckled. "Very well. I will see you at the dance. Denying myself the sight of your dress will sweeten the pleasure of its revelation. Ready your hair for my dowry." "I will." She touched his arm as she had before. For the last time, she realized. Her fingers lingered for just a moment. He wandered off to the southeast. Lauren watched him go, catching a spring in his step that had not been there before. She kept a gentle smile in case he turned around, but inside she quailed. Chet, her only true friend in all the world. Chet, foolishly and incurably in love with her. She would miss him more than all the rest, more than the birchwood itself. As soon as he had gone, Lauren slipped in the back door of his house. His mother's room lay quiet and still. Lauren chanced to look through the door and found her asleep. That was fortunate. A sudden scream might undo everything. Lauren went to the rack on the wall and pulled down one of Chet's hunting bows. She took the one of poorest make. It would serve for rabbits and squirrels, and she needed nothing grander. Lauren strung it quickly and slung it on her back, and then stooped to a low shelf where 2 full quivers rested. She took one, but she left the other. She would not make Chet a pauper, unable to hunt. She would only take what she must. Nightblade must always have such honor. That sounded stupid. Nightblade must always have such honor, she thought. It was time to go. Lauren had what she needed, and would not have to rely on the wizard to hunt for her. Her throat grew dry. This was goodbye forever. She was leaving home to fend for herself, out among the 9 lands. How could this be, when only that morning her greatest aspiration had been to find a way out of chopping logs? She made for the back door, and disaster struck. The door swung open, and Chet's father, Liam, stepped into the frame. Old and stooped, he was a genial man, but never seemed to notice Lauren's existence. That was not the case now. He froze on the spot and gawked at her, his watery eyes growing wider. He opened his mouth to cry out. Lauren had the bow in her hands. Before she could think, she leapt forwards. She leaped forwards and slammed the wood into his temple. His eyes fluttered and closed as he fell to the dirt floor, an angry red welt blooming to life on his forehead. She stifled her cry with the back of her hand and dropped to one knee. Frantically she placed her palm on his chest and felt a strong heartbeat. Her own pulse skipped in relief. Her eyes went to the bruise on his head. Chet. He could have forgiven Lauren for fleeing the village without telling him, but he could never forgive this. Could he? It does not matter, she thought. Soon she would be in the forest, never to return. Lauren shot to her feet and ran out the door. She made it to the trees and almost kept going, but at the last moment she could not leave without a final look. So she stopped beneath the low branches of an oak and turned to her home one last time. Her eyes roved across the simple houses, the smoke from the smithy, the pile of wood outside her house, her father. Her father? He stood by the chopping block, Lauren's axe in his hand, and just as her eyes found him, he saw her. No, that sounds stupid as hell. Hey, what's up, Miak? Ah, it's funny. Just returning to my roots. Oh god, I forgot to put chat up on the screen. My bad. He stood by the chopping block, Lauren's axe in his hand, and just as her eyes found him, he saw her. He stood dumbstruck for a moment. He took in her cloak, the sack hanging from her shoulders, the bow slung across her back. His face contorted in fury. Lauren turned and ran into the woods. As soon as the village fell out of sight, the terror in her veins turned to rage, far too late to do her any good. These are fast chapters, man. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. Okay, and the podcast version. Nightblade, Chapter 5. Nightblade, Chapter 5. Blur. Nightblade, Chapter 5. Nightblade, Chapter 5. She pounded through the woods, wasting no time to cover her trail or silence her footfalls. She could hide her trail from most, but her father, too, called the forest home. He had spent many more years beneath its boughs than Lauren had, and she knew he could track her easily. She would have to rely on speed and hope that his age would give her the advantage. Every odd noise sent a gout of terror through her, but then she would reflect upon the sound and realize it was only a bird taking flight, or a doe fleeing from her footsteps. Even in her terror and her haste, Lauren's instincts could sense what her mind could not. It seemed an eternity before she saw the white bark of the birches far ahead. The summer sun beat down through the leaves, and sweat soaked every inch of her. She weaved between them, jerking away whenever her travel sack caught on branches. Finally she slung it off her back to carry at her side. In a few breathless minutes she emerged from the copse to find the forest empty. Panic seized her. Her hour had not yet passed. Where had Zane gone? She scanned the ground for his trail, but then she heard the snap of a twig, and he rose from behind a fallen log. Yeah, they'll go pretty quick. Fast chapters. I am pursued, she said quickly. His eyes flashed. The constables? No, I sent them the other direction, but my father spied me as I left the village. He muttered a curse. Lauren thrust a hand into her travel sack, wrapped it around her father's cloak, and tugged. Here, leave your coat. It will get in the way and shine like the sun besides. Put this on. He obeyed without question, dropping the garment into the dirt and donning her father's green cloak. She saw his nose wrinkle at the smell, but he made no comment. Come, and quickly, she said. Try to follow my path exactly. The track I take us on will be difficult. The track I take us on will be difficult to follow. Mayhap we can lose him. I have no quarrel with your father, growled Zane. We should split up, or you should stay. Lauren's stomach spun circles. I had no quarrel with your constables, and yet I saved you from them. You cannot leave me. His eyes darted back and forth. Very well. Very well. Very well. Very well, but if he should catch us, I will not raise a hand against him first. He will raise his, I assure you, she thought. But she said nothing. Zane would go with her, as long as she did not scare him off. As they went south, the land fell away before them. The slope of the ground lent them speed, and Lauren used it to their advantage. Once the land began to level again, she swerved suddenly right and up a low rise. At the top, broken rocks formed a sort of circle. The Giant's Crown, some called it, and the ground grew hard and stony beyond. She followed the rocky terrain as long as she dared, but when it turned north she abandoned it and plunged again into the tree. Water bore no marks of passage. When the stream turned north, Lauren led Zane out of the water again. Here the trees were sparser, and they had to run long distances over open ground. Lauren imagined she could feel her father's eyes on her back as she ran. Her steps came faster and faster still, but soon Zane began to flag behind her. She had to slow her pace to match him, and every step seemed an irredeemable loss. You must hurry, she said. He will find us!" Zane did not bother with an answer. He could move no faster, and they both knew it. After a time, his ankle caught upon a protruding root. He stumbled, and in that moment her father struck. He leaped from the shadows between two thick oaks. A meaty hand lashed out, cracking against Lauren's cheek. She fell to the ground with a cry and struggled up before he could pin her down. But he did not come for her. When she rose, Lauren saw him atop Zane instead, wrapping an arm around the thinner man's throat. Zane's face turned red and then edged towards purple. He fought to bring a hand around, scrabbling for her father's face, but her father caught the hand and twisted it, prompting a screech of agony. Lauren's mind turned to ice at the cry. Never had her father hurt another in her presence, except when he fought her mother, and then Lauren only wanted each to hurt the other as much as possible. But now he threatened to crush the life from her chance at escape, the first man Lauren had ever hoped might save her from the life of pain and obscurity she feared. Icy rage turned white-hot, and Lauren drew the dagger. She leaped at her father with the blade held high, but he saw her coming and released Zane, scrabbling to his knees and away from her wild swing. He rose and roared like a bear brought to bay. The sound dampened Lauren's sudden burst of fury, and she hesitated. That moment was enough, and like a snake her father lunged. One hand gripped her wrist to hold the dagger helpless, and his other curled into a fist that he drove into her face. Stars erupted at the edge of her vision, and Lauren stumbled back. Her father squeezed her wrist until the dagger dropped to the grass, and then let her follow it. She gasped at the pain in her eye, blinking as she fought to clear her vision. "Spawn of soiled seed," said her father between heavy pants. "You have been a plague and a pox upon me since the day you first clawed air into your lungs." He kicked her. The hard leather of his boots felt like a falling... felt like a thing. I do not have an audiobook of Nightblade 1 by now, Miak. And it's been too fucking long. I tried to produce one, actually, through one of the, standard audiobook production channels. And it came out really bad. Not really bad, but it just came out to the point where I didn't like it. And it was really hard to promote it or market it because I didn't fucking like it. And I am not the voice talent that I would want to do my own book, but I can't afford, a talent on the level that I want to do my own book. So I'm putting this one up as an accessibility issue. As a temporary issue for accessibility and for people who prefer to listen to audiobook. At one point, at some point in the distant future, this will be replaced by, somebody on that upper level of audiobook talent who I would love to hire but simply can't right now. He kicked her. The hard leather of his boots felt like a falling tree trunk. Lauren screamed and tried to roll away, but he only kicked her in the back. She could not see. She could not think. Where was she? Who was this man, and why did he want to hurt her so? Why did some part of her mind cry that he should love her, pick her up and cradle her in his arms and promise to take the pain away? Instead, he only gave her more. Lauren's eyes fell on Zane, who crouched a few paces away. The wizard's lips moved, and his eyes began to glow. A hand curled at his side, and Lauren saw the flash of fire within it. "No!" she cried through the red haze that clouded her vision. "Do not kill him!" Zane froze. His lips stopped moving, and the fire wisped out in his palm. The shout drew her father's gaze. His ugly, beaded eyes fell on the wizard, and his lips split in a grimace, revealing spots of blood. He leaped cat-like upon Zane and bore the wizard to the ground. This time he wrapped his hands around the wizard's throat, digging his fingers in deep. Zane's eyes bugged forth as though they would burst from their sockets. He gasped a phrase and blue lightning sprang into being, but it vanished before he could unleash it. Lauren's heart broke. Zane would not have been here if not for her. He might have died on the way to Cabris, and he might not, but she had brought him to this place, and then brought her father's wrath to follow them, and now Zane would die for it. She could not allow it. Lauren saw the dagger lying near her fingers, and she thought of her childish dreams. Nightblade could not allow it. Lauren fought to her knees. Her bow still hung on her back, and by some grace of the gods its string was whole. Wow. I did not realize that was in there. Woof. Her bow still hung on her back, and by some grace of the sky its string was whole. Her fingers felt like wood, but she forced them around the bow shaft and pulled it free. Shakily she brought an arrow to string and half drew before taking 2 stumbling steps forward. This time her father had eyes for nothing but Zane. Lauren kicked as hard as she could, and something in her father's face broke under her boot heel. He fell away, rolling over and over to put distance between them as he screamed in rage. In a blink he regained his feet, but there he paused. Lauren's arrow rested at full draw, aiming straight for his heart. Slowly, her father's ham-fist hands came up on either side of his head. For every inch they climbed, the fury in his eyes redoubled. It's not that big of a deal that I'm going to edit it out of like future printings or whatever. I mean, you know, I'll make a note of it, obviously, but... No more. The words left Lauren in a whisper. That should probably be a whisper then. No more. The words left Lauren in a whisper. No more will you torment me. I am leaving, Father, and I mean never to return. You mean to defy me? You will do your duty as a daughter, or... She pulled just a little harder on the bow. Another inch of draw. Her father's voice fell to silence. You have never done your duty as a father, she said. You have never done your duty as a father, she said. I feel I owe you nothing. You owe me everything. I could have killed you in the cradle. I could have killed you when I woke up today and moved my bowels on your corpse. I made you, and now I see I made you worthless. His words should have stung, but she was beyond them. They were only a stronger flavor of the same things he had said all her life. And in this moment, now that another fate beckoned, she stood under his sway no longer. Then when I leave, you shall suffer no great loss. Her icy eyes met her father's boiling rage. Zane had finally regained his breath, and he came to stand at Lauren's side. He muttered, and as his eyes glowed white, a ball of lightning hovered in his grasp. You think you can escape me? Her father said, changing tack. I learned these lands years before I spilled you between your mother's legs. Nowhere in Selvin can you hide from me. Ready yourself for sleepless nights by a bright fire, for if you close your eyes and sleep, if for even a moment you let yourself sit in darkness... Lauren loosed the shaft. It sank into her father's thigh. He collapsed to the ground without a scream, but with a gut-deep grunt of pain. Chase us now, said Lauren. She turned and walked away from him, stopping for only a moment to retrieve the dagger and replace it in its sheath. She did not turn to see if Zane followed her, but after a moment she heard footfalls behind her. Her father did scream then, in rage more than pain. The hateful sound followed them for a long while, long past the time when she could no longer understand the words. Finally it died away. Water. Yeah, I hear you, Miak. If it makes you feel any better, and if you don't mind slight spoilers, she never sees him again. Literally forever. Where was I? Finally, it died away, just as they reached the flat plain between the forest's southern edge and the King's Road beyond it. The sun hung low in the sky by the time they reached it. Lauren had only seen the road twice in her life. Its hard-packed dirt felt odd beneath her feet. Not far beyond, they heard the whispering sigh of the Melnar as it babbled its way towards the High King's seat. Salute. "The King's Road at last," said Zane. They were the first words he had spoken since the fight, and they came hesitant and raspy from his throat. His bruises would long remain, Lauren knew. She feared to see the marks on her own ribs, and whispered a quick prayer of thanks that nothing had been broken. But the road would not let her think of the hurt for long. "Does the road reach as far as they say?" "I do not know what you have been told," said Zane, "but I would imagine it is longer. Follow it west from here, and you will come to every capital city in the 9 lands. Follow it east, and soon enough you will find yourself at the High King's seat." "But we do not go that way." He frowned. "No, we do not travel upon the road at all. Fast though our path might be upon it, watchful eyes would spy us far too easily. We must cut across and follow its course, but far from its edge." Lauren nodded. "How far will we go tonight?" "Your arrow was well placed. We need not fear your father's pursuit, and if I know constables, we will not see them until the morrow, if then. We will make for the river and camp upon its bank." Lauren would have traveled all night, eager to prove her willingness and her worth as a traveling companion, but her heart nearly melted in relief at Zane's words. A bone weariness had set upon her. For the first time she had stood up to her father, and she had emerged alive, though not unscathed. Her mind had not yet decided what to think of the encounter, and had settled instead for a comfortable numbness that drained her of energy. The old dude tells Lauren some snappy story. I'm not familiar with what you're with what you're talking about. She led the way across the road. Zane did an odd thing as he followed her. He skittered across the packed dirt, stepping lightly as though placing a foot upon it would invite the watchful eyes of every constable in Selvin. Once they had crossed, he resumed his stiff gait. The sun neared the horizon as they reached the bank of the Melnar. Lauren walked downstream until she found a large rock beside which to camp, and then returned and led Zane to the place. She threw her travel sack upon the dirt and fell beside it, resting her head on the soft, silty dirt of the riverbank. Zane slumped against the rock, and for a long time they sat there, neither speaking nor looking at each other. Eventually Lauren felt her stomach rumble, and so she dug into the pack and fetched some salted meat. She cut it with the hunting knife she always kept in her boot. The dagger at her belt was meant for a different kind of flesh, and split it with Zane. I could do that better. Oh, yeah. That's cool. She cut it with the hunting knife she always kept in her boot. The dagger at her belt was meant for a different kind of flesh, and split it with Zane. She pulled out more salted meat and one water skin for him. He drank thirstily and then refilled it from the flowing river. He chewed sparingly at the meat, and then wrapped the remainder to place it in the bags hanging at his belt. Lauren felt great relief to see the wizard ration himself. She would not have to mother him, at least. The sun had vanished beneath the horizon, but dull orange still glowed in the sky when Zane finally spoke. "Will you never return home?" Lauren thought hard upon it. "He will die. Not from today. That arrow wound will heal long before his temper does. He will die. Not from today, He will die. Not from today, that arrow wound will heal long before his temper does, but one day he will, as will my mother. We never grow younger. I could return once they have passed, but why would I? Do you have no other... No, I am in the wrong to ask. Some wounds must wait before we can clean them. She wondered what that meant. What of you? You do not seem on a course that bears return. What will you do? Run forever? No adverbs. I do not believe in that. What will you do? Run forever? He did not answer, only turned away and lay upon the ground with a little pillow made from torn grass. He fell asleep faster than she could believe. Lauren built her own grass pillow and lay upon it, but sleep would not come. She could only stare at the numberless stars as they sprang to life in the inky night sky. Her mind raced and stood still all at once. She could not think of home. She could not remember her mother's face. She could recall Chet, but not his voice. And she could not envision Cabris or any place else that lay ahead either. There was only the here and now, and the quiet bubbling of the Melnar close at hand. She did not remember drifting off, but before she knew it, she had fallen asleep upon her pillow of grass. And when she woke, Zane had taken his meat and his water skin and gone, leaving her alone by the riverbank. Try that again. She did not remember drifting off, but before she knew it, she had fallen asleep upon her pillow of grass. And when she woke, Zane had taken his meat and his water skin and gone, leaving her alone by the riverbank. Dun, dun, dun. Time is almost midnight. Not too bad. All right, one more chapter, then I'm going to take a short break. No adverbs. Miak. It's like you don't even know me. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Lauren waited for nearly... Chapter 6. Lauren waited for nearly an hour before she came to accept that Zane would not return. She spent the time eating more of her rations. She drank from the water skin, careful not to overfill herself, and replenished it from the river. And she poked gingerly at the bruises on her ribs and around her eye, probing their extent. When Zane still had not appeared, she cupped river water in her hands to see her reflection. The skin around her left eye had grown black. She let the water seep through her fingers. All the while, her eyes avoided the empty spot where Zane had slept. At last she forced herself to rise. He was gone, and he was not coming back. She expected the revelation to come with doubt or fear. Instead, Choose, Garrett. Adverbs or mayhap? Mayhap both. Both? Both. Both is good. Instead, her insides turned to ice, and doubt became resolution. She stowed her water skin in the travel sack and slung it over her shoulder. Then, her hand gliding along her dagger's hilt, she set off west along the river. Then, of her course. She focused on it to keep her thoughts from Zane, but then it felt as if the river dragged her backwards, so she tried to think of nothing at all. Fortunately, she traveled through a foreign land that lay beautiful in the early morning. She let her eyes roam the rolling terrain and the glow of pink in the eastern sky, focusing her mind upon the land around her. It had few trees compared to the birchwood, affording her excellent visibility in every direction. She walked atop the line of hills between the Melnar and the King's Road, where she could see the dark line of the birchwood on the northern horizon. But soon she realized that, while she remained upon that raised land, others could see her as well. The thought sobered her, and she descended the south side of the hills to walk the river bank instead. She could not... She could not still her mind forever, and at last she thought of her father. He had no doubt returned to the village by now. If the constables too had returned, father would tell them about his fight with Zane and Lauren. The constables would come, and until Lauren was far away, she must remain cautious. Long before midday, Lauren reached the road's great turn south. It swung left and crossed the river by means of a great stone bridge that robbed her of breath. The stones stood at least 5 paces high from the surface of the water, and they were shaped like river willows given form by human hands, grown from the earth's roots. Just beneath the bridge itself, they joined in great arches that supported the King's Road, curving across the top of the river's swells like the path of a thrown rock. The pillars were wet and dark, while the stones of the railing were caked with a white crust. How could such a thing ever come from human hands? How could such a thing ever come from human... I declare, how could such a thing ever come from human hands? Said Lauren. How could they build such towers of stone in the deep, deep water? She realized no one was around to hear, and her cheeks flushed as her hand went to the dagger's hilt. Well, for lack of anyone better, I shall talk to you, then, though I think the wonder of this bridge is lost upon you. The dagger said nothing. I must give you a name, she muttered, glancing over her shoulder. But mayhap it can wait until I have more time to think, and I no longer fear the pounding of boots behind me. Lauren expected the bridge to shake like the rickety wood and rope bridges common to the birchwood, but it stayed solid as the road. It unnerved her to walk across the stone and see the water swirl 5 paces below. Immediately she cut off and away from the road. Trees grew plentiful again, and she dipped into the space between their trunks. She kept walking until the ground rose and she could scarcely see the road to the west. Then she struck south, following the road's straight course and keeping it just on the edge of eyesight. In the birchwood, Lauren had often walked beneath trees that stood 20 paces or taller. Here she barely saw a one that reached more than 8. Though I am grateful for their company, these trees are bare saplings next to the ones from home, she murmured, her finger brushing the dagger. Midday came and went, and the sun began its slow journey back to the earth. Lauren felt a gnawing in her stomach and reached for the travel sack where her meat and bread waited. But just then she spotted a telltale patch of brown fur beneath a nearby shrub. Quiet as a ghost, she pulled her bow from her back and nocked an arrow. Silent she drew, and silent let fly. The rabbit gave a thin death scream. She dressed it quickly and struck a small fire. The rabbit tasted delicious, so she ate as much as she could, long past the point of enjoyment. Salted meat would last her long if she rationed it carefully, but on an uncertain road a wise traveler ate sparingly from reserves. She drank carefully, too, taking only a small sip of water. Blech. She does not. She completely forgets about naming the dagger. Oh, well, you don't know the answer to that one yet, Miak. I mean, you might if you do a real deep dive on Underrealm lore and if you've been around the community for a very long time. Still limbs brought thoughts of Zane, urgent and unwelcome. Lauren pushed down a sour feeling as the rabbit lost its savor. Soon she stamped out the dying embers of her fire and resumed her trek south. The rest of the day passed without event, but Lauren felt a curious sense of urgency growing. It spurred her legs until she no longer walked but half ran through the woods. She thought she might feel better if she did see the constables, if only to end her aching uncertainty. What if they trailed her in hiding, waiting to see if she would reunite with Zane? She felt eyes boring into her back and hoped she imagined them. As the sun neared the horizon, she decided that she must rest. If the constables indeed trailed her, she would gain nothing by pushing on through the night. She would only waste precious hours of sleep and dull her senses the next day. With no one to trade night watches, she spent her last hour's walk in search of a hidden place to sleep. She found it at last in a thick oak. The sun's last sliver. The sun's last sliver. That is correct, Sheath. The sun's last sliver had vanished only a moment ago. 12 feet from the forest floor, a large black hollow gaped. She hooked arms and legs around the trunk and shimmied up to poke a cautious eye above the last branch. The hollow lay empty. Climbing atop the branch, she inspected the hollow more closely. Indeed, it was empty of anything save ants. Lauren could stand ants, especially small ones, such as these, which did not bite. By running her legs along the thick branch, she could lean into the heart of the tree and rest. She wished for a rope to tie herself in, but she could not conjure one up now. Her arms she wedged against the hollow to better hold herself in place. As soon as she stilled, Lauren's mind leaped to Zane despite herself. She feared her thoughts might keep her from a restful sleep, but moon's light pierced the leafy canopy to fall upon her outstretched legs, and her sight grew hazy upon the cool silver glow. Weariness soon claimed her. She woke in the morning to a stiff back, though less so than she had feared. Sliding gently from the hollow, she climbed hand over foot down the oak's branches. She felt no hunger, but her urine smelled. That made her drink more water than she would have liked. She could not drink so much every day, but neither could she afford to grow too dry upon the road. Water loss could creep upon the unwary traveler, leaving them weak. Her thirst sated, she decided to visit the road before traveling on, a quick glance only to see what could be seen. She reached the road at the crest of a hill and hunched low as she walked out onto it, scanning the land in all directions. But her eyes found no travelers on either foot or horseback. With a small sigh of relief, Lauren palmed the dagger's hilt. "Luck is with us still," she muttered. "Luck is with us still," she muttered. As if in answer to her words, a small smudge appeared to the north. It grew larger as she watched, unable to move. Soon she dropped to her stomach in the dirt, for she could see what raised the cloud of dust. 2 men on horseback, riding south hard and fast along the road. Okay, that's chapter 6. I'm going to take a short break. I will pause the recording, and I will be back in a few. Don't go anywhere. Or do, as per usual. I am not the boss of you. Do your thing. you know what? Hold on. Well, now Audacity is flashing like Scrivener does when I do these things, but you know, we're going to have to live with it. Because I don't know why it's happening. I think I got 2 more chapters in me tonight. Maybe 3. We'll see. It's been wigging out the past few minutes. Well, there you go. I forgot my water. Shit, I need that. Because it is hot as a ball sack in here. All right. Trying again. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. Nightblade. Nightblade, Chapter 7. Nightblade, Chapter 7. Nightblade, Chapter 7. Nightblade, Chapter 7. Lauren scuttled for the trees, keeping as low as she could. The forest enveloped her like an old friend, and she felt safer the moment she came beneath its shadow. She plunged farther into the brush that covered the forest floor. But as soon as she lost sight of the road, Lauren paused. She could not be sure the men were constables, though something in her heart said they were. If so, she should keep an eye on them. But how could she ensure they would not spot her? Just south of where she stood, the land rose steeply to form a low ridge that ran alongside the road for what looked like many miles. Lauren made her choice and ran for the rise. The trees grew thinner as soon as the ground climbed, forcing her to dart from cover to cover. Finally she stood atop the ridge, a large cave at her back descending into the earth. She stepped behind the trunk of a tree and then poked an eye around it to look north. The men had drawn near. They drove their horses hard, and the beasts' flanks were streaked with white. They would pass her in a little while. She need only hide and wait. Once they left her behind, her journey to Cabris would be made in safety. Lauren slid her hand along the dagger's hilt. A good scare, certainly, but nothing to worry about. We are safe. She moved back behind the tree and slid down against its trunk, and her heart nearly stopped. The ground quivered under the impact of heavy feet. Not 3 yards away, a bear emerged from the mouth. Not 3 yards away, a bear emerged from the mouth of the cave. Its nose twitched as it snuffled the air, tiny eyes fixed on Lauren. Black fur stuck out in great bristles as its hackles rose. 2 cubs cowered behind their mother's hind legs, looking at Lauren with equal parts curiosity and fear. Her throat went dry as she slowly stood. Her hand slid to the dagger, but she dismissed it. A fool's hope, she thought. The dagger would serve no better against the bear than would her fingernails. But the birchwood held many bears, and Lauren knew what to do. It would mean exposing herself to the road again, but that seemed preferable to serving as the bear's supper. She sidestepped away from the tree and took several steps backwards. At her movement, the bear hunched down slightly and growled, but it did not advance. Slowly, Lauren backed down the slope, never taking her eyes from the beast. Another step. Another. If she could only get far enough, she could run without the bear giving chase. On the next step, her foot caught on a rock. The slope worked against her, and she nearly crashed to the ground. The sudden movement startled the bear, and it took 2 great steps forwards with a roar. Even at a distance, Lauren could smell the reek of its breath. She risked a glance over her shoulder. The constables had stopped their mounts on the road adjacent to where she stood. As she watched, they spurred their horses into the woods towards her. Mayhap they thought her some chance girl in trouble and did not recognize her from the forest, but they would know as soon as they saw her close. She must leave, and quickly. An idea sprang into her mind. She stomped the ground as hard as she could, throwing her hands into the air and bellowing an angry roar. Most bears would have backed away, but this one had cubs. The bear took 2 half steps and then broke into a run. The ground shook, and Lauren's legs tensed in readiness. Just before the bear reached her, Lauren leaped to the side. It could not stop quickly enough, and the loose soil gave way beneath its feet. The bear tumbled and rolled head over paws down the slope. A great plume of dust followed it down. Lauren could take no time to exult in her quick thinking. She ran up the ridge as fast as she could. The cubs fled into the cave in terror, but Lauren paid them no mind. She reached the top of the ridge and plunged down its far side, her feet lent sudden speed by the slope. Just as she passed over the top, she heard loud shouting behind her, joined by a roar. The constables had encountered the bear. Mayhap it would occupy them long enough for Lauren to make good on her escape. She forced herself to slow, though every part of her screamed to go faster. Her quick wits would mean nothing if she fell and broke a leg, or her neck. She picked her way on solid ground and rocks, avoiding any patch of ground that looked like it might slide out from beneath her. But despite her caution, bad luck caught Lauren at last. A rock... Microphone doing that weird thing again. But despite her caution, bad luck caught Lauren at last. A rock she had thought was sturdy shifted and tumbled beneath her foot. Lauren went down with a cry. She twisted to land on her front and planted her hands in the turf. It hurt, but she knew the bow on her back would not withstand a tumble. The bow. She could find a high spot in a tree, wait for the constables to approach, and then plant shafts within them before they knew what had happened. As quickly as she thought it, Lauren cast the idea aside. Even if she could shoot with such skill, Nightblade could not murder, especially not constables who were only doing their duty. Her only hope lay in escape, so she pushed off the ground, wincing at the sting in her palms, and kept running. Before long she heard the thunder of hoofbeats coming down the slope behind her. They had either evaded the bear or killed it. She risked a glance over her shoulder but could not see them through the trees. That was good, neither could they see her, but she could not outrun them forever. Lauren scanned the forest and saw something that might help, a fallen trunk with a hole beneath it. She dove in, careful not to snap the bow against the entrance. Not a moment too soon. The thundering hooves grew louder, and then they were upon her. But she had hidden in time. She saw a flash of red-boiled leather between the trees a few paces away, and the hoofbeats receded. Lauren waited until she could no longer hear the horses, and then she waited longer still. In the sudden silence of the woods, her pulse sounded like rolling thunder. When she felt sure they must be gone, she slid out from beneath the log. Ugh. A cluster of firethorns stood nearby, unruly but straight as a hedge. It ran south, crosswise to the slope. Lauren ducked behind it and slid along on hands and knees. In silence and shadow she crept, poking her head above the tops of the bushes every few moments to look for the constables. Now that she had a moment to observe, she could see that this side of the ridge ran down to a different, smaller road. This one, too, ran south as far as she could see, though she imagined it had to cut west and join with the main road eventually. She must gamble now. Either the constables would make for this smaller road and follow it, hoping to catch her, or they would climb the ridge and make for the King's Road once again. That seemed the likelier course. They had only seen her, not Zane. They might Salut. They might surmise she had separated from the wizard, and if so, they would return to the main road in hope of catching him. Then Lauren realized that the forest around her had grown too quiet. An arrow sped from between the trees to thunk into a tree beside her. Lauren's body jerked in surprise. She dropped flat and slid beneath the firethorn. The arrow had come from above. Somehow the constables had circled around to her rear. She had underestimated their woodcraft. Mayhap for the last time. Why would they try to kill her? They wanted Zane, not her. As if in reply to the thought, she heard Corin's voice. "Stay your hand! Leave her whole!" "Stay your hand! Leave her whole!" Byrne, the one with a harsher look, shouted a reply that Lauren could not make out. Crashing footsteps sounded from up the ridge, much higher than she had feared. Mayhap she could yet evade them. Once she passed beneath the firethorn, she rose to flee in a crouching run. Now that she had their measure as woodsmen, she would withhold nothing. She used every trick she had learned from Hey, what's up, 66? She used every trick she had learned from a lifetime in the birchwood. Her thoughts faded to a dull murmur, and instinct took over. Her feet found only the hardest ground, and she twisted and weaved to avoid snapping any branch. She wrapped her cloak tight, letting its brown fade her into the forest. The sounds behind faded away as she pressed on. There was the road, and now she could see a caravan, its wagons sitting... There was the road, and now she could see a caravan, its wagons sitting in a rough line. People in bright clothing sat clustered in a group at the front. Men in shirts of mail and shining helms stood guard around them. But the back of the caravan lay nearly unattended. Lauren made for the tree line. Many yards of open space stretched between the forest and the wagons, but that could not be helped. If she could make it to one of the wagons unseen... The closest guard turned and walked away, and she seized her chance. She broke from the trees and raced across the rocky ground as fast as she dared while staying deadly silent. Her cowl flew back and her raven hair streamed in her wake. She expected at any moment to hear a cry of alarm or the sound of drawn steel. None came. Lauren reached the back of the rearmost wagon and slipped down the line to the third from the last. Still no one, guards or constables, was in sight. Without a sound, she leaped up and over the wagon's edge into the waiting shadows. Without a sound, she leaped up and over the wagon's edge into the waiting shadows. A little bit more water there. Oh. Man. Chapter 8. Chapter 8. Chapter 8. Nightblade, Chapter 8. Nightblade, Chapter 8. Lauren inspected her surroundings with haste. Bolts of cloth lay on wooden shelves that lined either side of the wagon, and a thin aisle ran up the center. A merchant's caravan. She hoped that would help. From what Lauren knew of the rich, they did not appreciate the eyes of the law and had skill at turning them away. But even a cursory look would find her here. The merchants had packed their racks too tightly for Lauren to slip in among them. She almost turned and left, but then she heard footsteps outside, near the wagon. Her heart skipped a beat, and she slipped deeper into the wagon. Then she saw that she had been wrong before. One shelf near the front of the wagon was empty. Lauren slid onto it, squeezing back as far from the aisle as she could manage. A great shout sounded outside, followed by the hiss of drawn steel. For a moment Lauren feared she had been discovered, but the sounds retreated, and she realized the caravan had spotted the constables. She heard hooves approach and pull to a stop not far from her wagon. "We are men of the King of Selvin, about his business." "We are men of the King of Selvin, about his business," came Corin's burbling voice. "And what business has the king with us?" came a sharp reply. Oh, that's Damaris. Hold on, I'm going to listen to Damaris again just to get the feel of it, just to get it right. Wait, where's Damaris? I know I did her. Crap. Crap. Okay, well, we're going to have to do our best. "And what business has the king with us?" came a sharp reply, a woman's voice. "And what business has the king with us?" came a sharp reply. "They fled us south on the King's Road. We spotted the girl on that ridge. She may have come among you." "No girl came," said the woman. "We have seen no one since yesterday. Who is this man you seek?" "He is between our heights," said Byrne. "He may have worn a blue coat or a dark green cloak. His hair hangs long and curled." We saw him, or one like him," said the woman. Lauren put a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. "When?" said Corin. "Yesterday, just after the sun had set." "Yesterday, just after the sun had set. He came upon our camp at night and offered us fair payment for a horse. He refused to rest the night, though we offered him hospitality. Instead he rode on, south, along this road." The constables remained silent a long moment, or if they spoke, Lauren could not hear their words. "He did not have a girl with him?" Corin said at last. "She would have been young, in forester's garb." "Of course he did not," said Byrne. "We just saw her." "No one came with him," said the woman. "Alone he arrived, and alone left, nor have we seen any other since. If you pursued him, I am sorry to have sold him the horse, but we could not have known he deserved justice." "Of course, my lady," said Corin. "Last night, you say?" I do. "Then we must away. We thank you—" "Hold," said Byrne. "The girl is near." Again they fell quiet, though this time Lauren felt sure the constables must be speaking softly. That proved true, as their voices gradually swelled. That proved true, as their voices gradually swelled in anger. Finally Byrne spoke again, loud and clear. "If you have not seen her, it will not matter if we search your wagons." That would be a no, 6-6. That would be a no. "They carry only goods for trade," said the woman, indignant. When Corin spoke, he sounded as though he held anger in check. "My stalwart friend is mayhap over-eager, but the girl could have arrived without your knowledge and stowed herself away." Lauren searched around her in panic. They might not see her from the wagon's rear, but then again they might, and if they came inside the wagon they would find her for certain. "Come now," said the woman. "Our guards stand vigilant. She is not here." "Let us see, then," said Byrne. His voice had taken on a mean edge that Lauren did not like. Her eyes roved again over the inside of the wagon. No better hiding place presented itself, but as she glanced at the floor, her gaze caught on something. A shaft of sunlight fell upon a board that protruded from the wagon's floor. She leaned out and prodded it with her fingers. It was loose. She lifted, and a large panel rose silently. Beneath lay a compartment, cunningly hidden. Within sat several packages wrapped in brown cloth. But more important, plenty of space remained for Lauren to hide herself. Like a snake, she slid into the compartment. Then she held the wood panel steady on all her fingers, lowering it into place without a sound. She could not be sure it lay flush, but she could do no better. Lauren heard the constables move down the caravan towards her wagon, drawing closer. She heard a gruff snort, and then the wagon shook. Heavy boots thudded onto its floor, and Lauren barely kept from yelping in fright. Through the cracks in the panel above her, Lauren spied Burns' grim features. The constable walked up the length of the wagon, peering into every corner. He stuck his nose right into the shelf where she had hidden a moment before. At last he turned and stalked towards the wagon's rear. The whole thing shook again as he clambered out. Yeah, not a super option for me right now, 6-6. The constables moved slowly away. Lauren waited, breathless. Each passing moment felt like an eon. At long last she heard conversation again, though it was too far off to make out, and then came the thunder of galloping hooves. Still she waited, listening for some clue or sign of safety. Instead, she heard voices. One a man's, deep and booming, and the other belonged to the woman she had heard earlier. "They found none of the compartments?" said the woman. "None, my lady." "None, my lady." Gregor. Oh man, I wasn't I forgot about Gregor somehow. "None, my lady," replied the guard. "We followed them every moment. They never so much as glanced at their feet." "That is good, though it was too close a thing regardless. I do not like surprises." "Nor I, my lady," said the man. Their conversation ceased. Oh God, I'm not super happy with Gregor, but None, my lady. That's better. "They found none of the compartments?" said the woman. Put a little growl into it. "None, my lady," replied the guard. "We followed them every moment. They never so much as glanced at their feet." Too much growl. "They never so much as glanced at their feet." "That is good, though it was too close a thing regardless. I do not like surprises." "Nor I, my lady," said the man. Their conversation ceased. Lauren thought they must have moved away. After a few minutes of silence, she reached up to lift the panel off. A quick glance told her no one stood behind the wagon to see, so she slid out of the compartment and replaced the panel before creeping to the back of the wagon. Now guards stood in thin-stretched rows down both sides of the caravan, all of them facing outward. Her escape would prove more difficult than her arrival, it would seem. But as Lauren surveyed their positions, trying to work out the best angle by which to leave, a child appeared from nowhere. She sprang up from below the edge of the wagon's back panel, a tiny thing with skin as black as night. Yellow brocade glinted on a muted purple gown, matching the shine of her innocent eyes, wide as dinner plates. They grew wider still as she gaped at Lauren. "Who are you?" "Who are you?" cried the girl. Are you the one the constable sought?" Lauren fled for the front of the wagon. It had a smaller opening than the rear, but still large enough to slip through. But as she dropped to the ground, she found herself facing a yard of bared steel. She froze. Her eyes traveled up the length of the sword to the man who held it. He dwarfed any person she had ever seen. His skin, like the girl's, nearly glowed in its darkness, but Lauren could scarcely look away from his eyes, for they were solemn and uncompromising as stone. He wore a shirt of chain and a silver helmet like the other guards, but also steel pauldrons wrought with gold inlay. Lauren took him in for a moment, and then her knees buckled and she collapsed to the ground. She cowered at the steel point of his sword, ready to leap forwards and plunge into her chest. "Who are you?" said the man. She recognized the booming voice from earlier. I... The word Nightblade leaped into her mind and vanished like a puff of smoke. "Gregor, lower your blade." A woman arrived, and Lauren could hear it was the one who had spoken before. Her voice was even more distinct in the open air. From her eyes and the shape of her face, Lauren knew at once that this must be the mother of the little girl she had seen. But where the girl was all bounce and innocence, in the woman's face Lauren saw a grim determination more steely than her captain's sword. And at her command, that sword dropped, its point sinking into the grass. The woman strode forwards, swirling her dress around her with a flourish. Like a wizard's trick, the little girl appeared just behind her mother's legs. Lauren thought at once of the bear cubs. "You are the girl the constables sought, I imagine," said the woman. No trace of a question lined her words. Potato chips help? That seems fake. I am, said Lauren, finding her voice at last. More of her wits gathered to her, and she hastily added, "My lady." "Help her up." Gregor seized Lauren's shoulders and hauled her to her feet. To Lauren it felt as though he could fling her into the sky, but he set her down almost gently on her heels. The woman gestured with 2 fingers. Lauren took 3 steps back, quick and yet unhurried. The woman stepped forwards to take his place. Her hand leaped out to cup Lauren's chin and tilt it up. She studied Lauren's face for a moment. "How came you by that eye? Not from the constables, I hope?" "No," said Lauren, unsure how to take this. She winced as the woman probed her bruises with a finger. That gift I received before their pursuit began." The woman removed her hand and stepped back. "Do you choose to withhold your name?" Lauren blinked before bowing. "I am Lauren, my lady, of the family Nelda." "Damaris," said the woman, inclining her head, "of the family Yaren. Well met." "And you," said Lauren, keeping her head and most of her body bent. She could not shake a keen awareness of Gregor and his sword. Oh, stand, girl. Oh, stand, girl," said Damaris. Ooh. What happened to my document? "Oh, stand, girl," said Damaris. "Oh, stand, girl. Oh, stand, girl," said Damaris. "I am a merchant, not the queen." Lauren straightened. "Thank you." "You are pursued, and rather hotly, it seems," Damaris went on. "Tell me why." "They spoke the truth. I traveled with the Lauren clamped her mouth shut, her cheeks flaming red. "With the man they sought." Damaris's nostrils flared. "I thought I heard a secret hidden in their words, but a wizard? That is remarkable." "I suppose I should count myself lucky the man did not cast us all in fire and steal the horse he needed." Her eyes flicked past Lauren to the wagon. "But tell me, the constables were thorough. How did they miss you?" Lauren heard something in Damaris's tone and thought she knew what it might be. "I found a loose board in the wagon's floor, my lady. I hid myself beneath it." "In that wagon?" "In that wagon?" said Damaris, pointing. "Yes, my lady." Damaris's voice took on an undercurrent of steel. "And did you see anything else concealed within the floor?" That frickin' microphone. Oh, really, 6'6"? That's hilarious. That's true, Sheathed, but considering that the Queen of Selvin is a woman and she says the queen, not a queen, it would be more appropriate, you know what I mean? Like she's saying, I'm not the queen, I'm a merchant, I'm not the queen of Selvin. Does that make sense? Not that she couldn't be the king, but she's thinking of a specific person when she says it. Damaris's voice took on an undercurrent of steel. "And did you see anything else concealed within the floor?" Once again Lauren heard the meaning beneath the words, and so she said, "Not a thing, my lady. The compartment lay empty, with plenty of room to stretch my legs." Damaris relaxed, lips twitching in a smile. "It is such a pleasure to find wit and charm in a chance stranger." Lauren bowed again. Lauren bowed again. "My lady is too kind. I give only the truth." The tension on the air melted away, and Damaris's daughter emerged again to study Lauren. Her wide eyes roved up and down. Lauren had the uncomfortable feeling of being a sow under inspection. "Will we give her to the constables, mother?" said the girl. Excuse me. Lauren's heart slid into her throat, but Damaris shook her head. "We will not. They sought the Excuse me. We will not. They sought the wizard more keenly, I think, and he abandoned her. Sending this girl into the hands of the law would gain us no profit." Lauren seized upon Damaris's hidden meaning. "I know of the hidden compartments and what lies within them," she thought. "If they give me to the constables, I might speak of them." It gave her a sense of security. When two strangers walked together outside of the king's law, neither could gain much from betrayal of the other. Then she had a second thought, and realized that might not be so. If such knowledge indeed proved dangerous, Lauren's corpse would serve Damaris better than her presence. Lauren's eyes flitted to Gregor and the bare steel in his huge gloved fist. As though she read Lauren's mind, Damaris shook her head. As though she read Lauren's mind, Damaris shook her head. "You have nothing to fear, girl. Not needlessly do we spill blood. Such policy serves one who lives by the sword, but rarely is it profitable to those who live by the coin." Again she motioned with 2 fingers. Gregor slid his sword into its scabbard, though too slowly for Lauren's comfort. "Thank you, my lady. It would seem I am in your debt." "I have given you nothing." "I have given you nothing," Damaris replied. "I have merely neglected to take anything away. Now, where are you bound?" Lauren thought of a lie she might tell, but the thought went too long, and so she abandoned it for the truth. "Cabras." "And your wizard friend?" "Cabras as well." Do you seek for him, then?" That gave Lauren pause. Did she? Lauren did not know. She only knew that she had begun her journey with Cabras in mind, and nothing had given her cause to change course. But Zane? Mayhap she would find him, but she would not be surprised if he had quit her forever. "I do not, my lady. He seemed eager to part ways with me, and I have no reason to think that may have changed in the day that has passed since." And did he give you that kiss upon your face?" Lauren shook her head quickly. "No. In fact, he rescued me from—" She nearly said "my father," but something held her tongue. Damaris did not need to know, and doubtless did not want to. Instead she said, "I was trapped. Zane provided the means of my escape. Though I know not why he left, I bear him no ill will." Damaris nodded. "Very well." "Very well. Give him cake, too." We're going to run out of cake at this rate. "Very well. If Cabras be your destination, then our paths lie upon the same road. You will travel with us, at least for now." Lauren swayed on her feet. I would not impose myself as a burden upon you, my lady." "No, you would not." Lauren. "No, you would not." Damaris turned with a whirl of her dress and left, Gregor close on her heels. The daughter remained. Her eyes gazed wide and white, striking Lauren again with their intensity. Dark brown irises made the whites all the more prominent. After her mother had passed out of earshot, the girl stepped forwards. "I am Annis," she said. Lauren bowed. "I am Lauren of the family Nelda. Well met." "I know who you... I know who you are." "I am Annis of the family Yeren." "I am Annis. Well, you see." "I know who you are," said the girl, "I know who you are," said the girl, giggling. "I know who you are," said the girl, giggling. "You told Mother." "Still, manners are never out of place." Annis's smile dampened as they roamed Lauren's face. "I do not think the one who gave you that eye had very good manners." Lauren's hand rose to her left eye, brushing gingerly against the dark bruise. "No, he did not." "Are you a great fighter? Have you killed many men?" "With this?" Lauren laughed and pointed at the bow. "This is no bow for fighting, nothing worthy of a great name. Squirrelbane, you might call it." But she felt keenly aware of the dagger on her belt, and she drew her cloak a little closer. She did not think anyone had seen the blade, and it might be best to keep it that way. Annis giggled again, oblivious. She's not really oblivious. Annis giggled again, oblivious. "You are funny. Come, you may ride with me in my carriage." "You are funny." "Well, you see, you are funny." You are funny. "You are funny. Come, you may ride with me in my carriage." Lauren followed her towards the front of the caravan, but as she neared the lead wagon, she felt a keen gaze upon her. Glancing up, Lauren saw Gregor's dark and solemn eyes fixed upon her. Though she met his look, he did not turn away. All right, that's it for me. I was going to try to go for 3, but no. Oh my gosh. All right. All right, almost 2 hours in the booth. I'm going to end off now. Go get myself some sleep. And be on a writing stream. I'm going to try to be on a writing stream by 9 in the morning. Oh, I have to make a YouTube video. Okay, so I guess I'll make a YouTube video first. Try to get on stream by like 10, maybe 10:30. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out, y'all. Good to see you, 6'6". Good to see you, Sheathed. Good to see you, that ninja. Miak, you are also here. I'm kidding, of course, Miak. You know I love you. And to anybody else who watches the stream, Miak and I have an understanding where we take the piss out of each other constantly. All right, that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you next time. Bye.